The Shadow Network had grown beyond anything the founders had imagined. What started as 12 scattered settlements had become a hidden civilization spanning dozens of star systems. 50,000 humans now lived in secret, building ships and weapons while the galaxy believed their species was extinct. Kim Jae-hwan stood before a holographic display showing Vorthok fleet movements. The former Earth military strategist had spent 5 years studying alien combat patterns. Every battle report, every tactical manual the network had stolen, every piece of intelligence from their spies, Jae-hwan had analyzed it all. They fight, like they build everything else, he explained to the group of military commanders gathered around him. Everything follows strict patterns. When they encounter resistance, they respond with overwhelming force, applied in predictable ways. Song, Hyron, one of his best students, raised her hand. How do we use that against them? We do what humans have always done best, Jae-hwan replied with a smile. We improvise, we adapt. We make them react to us instead of the other way around. He highlighted several points on the tactical display. Vorthok ships always maintain formation during battle. They never break ranks even when it would be tactically smart. Their commanders follow the same attack patterns that worked for them in previous conquests. An Dong-hyuk, who led the network's special forces, leaned forward with interest. So we hit them with something they've never seen before. Exactly. We use small, fast ships that can change tactics instantly. We attack from unexpected angles. We make them chase us into ambushes. Most importantly, we never fight the same way twice. In another part of the network, Yoon Soo-jin was working on an even more ambitious project. The chief engineer had moved beyond simply copying alien technology. She was improving it. The problem with Vorthok equipment, she explained to her team, is that it's designed for one specific purpose. Their weapons are incredibly powerful, but they can't be modified in the field. Their ships are fast and strong, but they can't adapt to new situations. She gestured to the hybrid ship they were building. It looked strange. Part human design, part alien technology, with modifications that no other species would have thought to make. Human engineering has always been about making things work better than they were designed to. We take alien power, sources and weapons, but we build them into ships that can be reconfigured during combat. We create equipment that learns and adapts. The ship's hull was covered with armor that could shift and change based on what weapons were being used against it. The engines could be adjusted for different types of space combat. Even the weapons could be modified with new ammunition types during battle. It's not as powerful as a pure Vorthok warship, Soo-jin admitted, but it's much more versatile. And in the hands of human crews who know how to think creatively, that versatility will give us a huge advantage. While the engineers built better ships and the strategists planned new tactics, other members of the network were working on an equally important task: recruitment. Bae Minho had spent 3 years infiltrating alien societies throughout the galaxy. He posed as a refugee trader, moving from world to world and making contact with species that had been conquered by the Vorthok. What he found surprised him. The galactic hegemony was not as stable as it appeared from the outside. Many species served the Vorthok only because they had no choice. They provided troops and resources because the alternative was extinction. On a world populated by the reptilian Kethmar, Minho made contact with a resistance leader named Vosak. Your species fought the Vorthok? Vosak asked during their secret meeting. We heard they were completely destroyed. That's what the Vorthok want everyone to believe, Minho replied. But humans are harder to kill than they thought. We're building something new, something that can stand up to the hegemony. Vosak's eyes brightened with hope. The Kethmar have waited generations for someone brave enough to challenge Vorthok rule. What do you need from us? Similar conversations were happening throughout the galaxy. The crystalline shell Nari provided rare minerals for ship construction. The aquatic Murdon shared intelligence about Vorthok naval movements. Even some individual Vorthok citizens, disgusted with their government's brutality, began secretly helping the resistance. The network was becoming something larger than just human survival. It was turning into a multi-species alliance united by the desire for freedom. Back on the Vorthok homeworld, Woo Jin was beginning the most dangerous phase of his long mission. After 15 years of careful observation, he had identified the research facility's greatest weakness, the communication array. The aliens trusted their security systems completely. They never imagined that a primitive human prisoner could understand their technology well enough to use it. But Wu Jin had been watching and learning for over a decade. He knew exactly how their systems worked. The communication array was connected to the facility's main computer network. If he could access it, he could send messages anywhere in the galaxy. More importantly, he could access classified information about Vorthak military operations. The opportunity came during a routine testing session. The scientists were studying human problem-solving abilities by giving Wu Jin access to computer terminals. They watched him work on simple puzzles while recording his brain activity, but the terminal was connected to the main network. While the scientists focused on their brain scans, Wu Jin quietly accessed the communication system. He had only minutes before they would notice what he was doing. His fingers flew over the alien interface as he uploaded a message to the quantum communication network. It was a simple signal, just a few numbers that would mean nothing to alien interceptors but would tell the shadow network everything they needed to know. The message contained the location of the Vorthak High Command, the schedules of their military fleets, and most importantly, proof that he was still alive and in position to help. Within hours, the message reached Li Dehai at the Kepler mining colony. She stared at the transmission in amazement. "It's from Earth," she whispered. Someone survived on the homeworld. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The message also contained detailed intelligence about Vorthak military capabilities and government structure. Someone had been gathering information for years and was ready to share it with the resistance. The network's leaders held an emergency meeting. Park Taemin's military assessment was grim but hopeful. "This changes everything," he announced. "We finally have reliable intelligence about enemy operations. We know where their command centers are located. We know when their fleets will be vulnerable." Choi Hana raised the question they were all thinking. "Are we ready? Do we have enough ships and soldiers to actually challenge them?" Jae Hwan consulted his tactical analyses. "We have 47 combat ships and nearly 8,000 trained fighters. The Vorthak have hundreds of ships and millions of soldiers. In a direct confrontation, we would lose." "But we're not going to fight a direct confrontation," added Sujin. "We're going to fight smart. We hit them where they're weak and disappear before they can respond. We turn their size against them." The network began preparing for active warfare. Hidden shipyards increased production. Training facilities pushed recruits harder than ever before. Intelligence networks gathered detailed information about potential targets. Most importantly, they began coordinating with alien resistance groups throughout the galaxy. The multi-species alliance that had been building in secret was finally ready to reveal itself. On dozens of worlds, resistance leaders received the same message. "Humanity lives. The rebellion begins soon. Be ready." The Vorthak had built their empire on fear and overwhelming force. They had crushed every rebellion by making examples of entire species. But they had never faced anything like what was coming. The humans and their allies were not seeking to replace the Vorthak as galactic rulers. They wanted something much more dangerous to the established order: freedom for all species to determine their own destiny. Wu Jin continued his careful role as the defeated prisoner. But inside his cell, he was planning for the day when Vorthak ships would fill the sky and the galaxy would learn that humanity had returned. The aliens had made a critical error in keeping him alive. They thought they were studying a broken specimen from an extinct species. Instead, they had given their greatest enemy 15 years to prepare for war. Soon, the Vorthak would discover just how expensive that mistake had been. The galaxy was about to change forever, and humanity would be the ones changing it. 15 years had passed since the day Wu Jin watched Earth burn. His cell had become his entire world. The Vorthak scientists came every day to test him. They made him solve puzzles, answer questions, and demonstrate how humans thought through problems. At first, Wu Jin had fought them. He refused to cooperate and stayed silent during their tests. But hunger and loneliness broke down his resistance. The aliens were patient. They could wait forever. Humans could not. So Wu Jin began to play their game. He answered their questions and solved their puzzles. But he was careful. He never showed them how smart he really was. He made mistakes on purpose. He acted confused when the solutions were obvious. The Vorthak began to think humans were clever but not brilliant. While they studied him, Wu Jin studied them back. He learned their language by listening to the guards talk. He memorized the layout of the research facility by watching through his cell window. He discovered their weaknesses by paying attention to how they reacted to different situations. The Vorthak were creatures of habit. They did everything the same way every time. They followed rules and procedures without question. This made them efficient, but it also made them predictable. Wu Jin filed this information away in his mind. Far away from the Vorthak homeworld, something was happening that the aliens knew nothing about. In the Kepler system, a small mining colony was still alive. Li Da-hai checked the sensor readings for the third time that morning. The colony was hidden inside a large asteroid, protected by layers of rock and metal that blocked most scanning equipment. 200 humans lived here, working the mines and trying to stay invisible. Da-hai had been the colony administrator when the attack on Earth happened. Now she was their leader and protector. Every day brought new challenges. Food was running low. The air recyclers needed parts they could not make. Worst of all, they had lost contact with all other human settlements. "Ma'am," said Park Jin-ho, the colony's communication officer, "I'm picking up something strange on the quantum band." Da-hai hurried to the communication center. Quantum communications were nearly impossible to detect or intercept. If someone was using that frequency, they were trying very hard to stay hidden. "It's a code," Jin-ho continued, "but not one I recognize." Tae-hee looked at the patterns on the screen. There was something familiar about them. Then she realized what she was seeing. It was Morse code, but modified. Someone had taken the old Earth system and changed it just enough to fool casual observers. "Can you decode it?" she asked. Jin-ho worked for several minutes. Finally, text appeared on his screen. "Human colony Kepler 452b seeks contact with other survivors. Please respond if you receive this message." Da-hai felt her heart skip. They were not alone. Somewhere out there, other humans had survived the attack. She grabbed the microphone and began transmitting her own message. 3 systems away, Park Taemin was having trouble sleeping. The military research outpost he commanded was small but well-armed. They had been studying new weapon designs when the aliens attacked Earth. Now those weapons might be their only hope of survival. His communication officer woke him in the middle of the night cycle. "Sir, we're receiving coded transmissions, multiple sources." Taemin rushed to the communication center. The quantum network was buzzing with activity. Hidden human settlements were making contact for the first time since the attack. Mining colonies, research stations, exploration ships, they were all still out there, scattered across the galaxy. Within days, they had identified 12 separate human groups. The largest was an agricultural colony led by someone named Choi Hana. She had nearly 1,000 survivors growing food on a planet the aliens had never bothered to scan. The survivors began sharing information. They learned that the Vorthak had been thorough but not perfect. Their attack had focused on major population centers and known human territories. The small hidden settlements had been overlooked or ignored. Choi Hana proposed something that seemed impossible: rebuilding human civilization in secret. They would call it the Shadow Network. Each settlement would work on different projects while staying hidden from alien patrols. "We can't fight them now," Hana transmitted during their first group meeting. "They're too strong and we're too few. But we can prepare, we can grow, and someday we can make them pay for what they did." The Bar network began to take shape. Daehee's mining colony would focus on gathering rare materials needed for advanced technology. Taemin's outpost would develop new weapons and defense systems. Hana's agricultural world would provide food and medical supplies for the entire network. They established secure communication protocols and began moving people and resources between settlements. It was dangerous work. Alien patrols were everywhere, and one mistake could doom them all. Back on the Vorthak homeworld, Wu Jin was beginning his daily routine. The guards came for him at the same time every morning. They led him to the same testing room where the same scientists asked him the same types of questions. But today was different. As they walked through the corridors, Wu Jin heard something unusual. The guards were talking about increased security around the galaxy. There had been reports of anomalies in several systems. Supply ships were disappearing. Communications were being intercepted. Wu Jin kept his face blank, but inside he felt a spark of hope. Could other humans have survived? Were they fighting? Back during his testing session, Wu Jin was more cooperative than usual. He solved the puzzles quickly and answered questions with apparent honesty. The Vorthak scientists seemed pleased with his performance. But Wu Jin was really listening to their conversations. He heard them discussing security concerns and supply problems. Something was happening that worried them. The perfect order of the galactic hegemony was showing cracks. That evening, alone in his cell, Wu Jin allowed himself to smile for the first time in years. He was not the last human after all. Somewhere out there, his people were alive and fighting. The shadow network grew stronger each month. New settlements joined them. Refugees from destroyed colonies found their way to safe havens. The network began building ships and training soldiers. Kim Jae-hwan, a former military strategist, developed new fighting techniques designed specifically to counter alien tactics. The Vorthak relied on overwhelming firepower and rigid formations. Humans would use speed, stealth, and unpredictability to even the odds. Yoon Soo-jin, a brilliant engineer, began reverse engineering captured alien technology. She discovered that Vorthak equipment was advanced but inflexible. It could not adapt to unexpected situations. Human technology was simpler, but much more versatile. The network established secret bases throughout the galaxy. They recruited allies from other species that had been conquered by the Vorthak. Many alien races served the hegemony not from loyalty but from fear. They were waiting for someone brave enough to stand up to their oppressors. Bae Min-ho led a team of infiltrators who posed as traitors and refugees. They gathered intelligence about Vorthak military movements and government operations. They learned about factional disputes within the hegemony and weaknesses in their security systems. The network even began conducting small raids. They hit isolated outposts and supply convoys, always making it look like the work of pirates or rebels from conquered species. The Vorthak never suspected that the extinct humans were behind the attacks. Wu Jin continued his role as the helpless prisoner. But he was learning more about his captors every day. He discovered the location of important facilities by watching transport schedules. He learned about military hierarchies by observing how different ranks of officers behaved around each other. Most importantly, he began to understand the Vorthak mindset. They were absolutely convinced of their own superiority. They believed that any species that submitted to them was weak and worthless. Any species that resisted was dangerous and had to be destroyed. This arrogance was their greatest weakness. They could not imagine that an inferior species could outsmart them. They would never expect the scattered survivors of humanity to rebuild their strength in return for revenge. As the years passed, the Shadow Network prepared for the day when they would reveal themselves to the galaxy. They built fleets and trained armies. They forged alliances and gathered intelligence. They waited for the perfect moment to strike, and in his cell on the Vorthak homeworld, Wu Jin continued to play his part. The aliens thought he was a broken specimen, a living example of human defeat. They had no idea that he was watching, learning, and preparing to help bring about their downfall. The galaxy thought humanity was dead. Soon they would learn how wrong they were. Kang Wu Jin pressed his face against the cold metal of the observation window. His breath made small clouds on the glass as he watched the stars. The research station was quiet except for the soft hum of machines keeping him alive in the empty space beyond Pluto. He had been alone for 3 months now. The other scientists had gone back to Earth for the holiday season. Wu Jin had volunteered to stay behind to watch the experiments. Someone had to keep an eye on the alien bacteria samples. They were studying He did not mind the solitude. It gave him time to think and work without interruption. The communication array buzzed softly behind him. Wu Jin turned from the window and walked to the control panel. The message light was blinking red. Strange. Earth was not supposed to send any transmissions for another week. He pressed the receive button and waited. Static filled the speakers for several seconds, then a voice came through, broken and filled with panic. All stations. This is Earth Defense Command. We are under attack. Repeat. We are under attack. The message cut to static again. Wu Jin's heart began to race. He adjusted the communication settings and tried to get a clearer signal. The voice came back, but it was different now. Weaker. Unknown ships. Massive fleet. They came from nowhere. Orbital defenses are down. Cities are burning. The transmission ended with a scream that made Wu Jin's blood run cold. He stood frozen for a moment, unable to believe what he had heard. Then his training kicked in. He ran to the long-range sensors and began scanning toward Earth. What he saw made him fall into his chair. The blue-green dot that had been Earth was now surrounded by hundreds of bright spots. Ships. Massive ships that did not belong to any human government. As he watched, flashes of light appeared around the planet. Weapons fire. The orbital stations that protected Earth were exploding one by one. Wu Jin tried to contact other human outposts. The moon base did not answer. Mars colony was silent. The space stations around Jupiter gave only static. Fear crawled up his spine like ice water. He switched to the emergency broadcast frequency and listened. For hours, he heard nothing but the whisper of empty space. Then, just as he was about to give up, a weak signal came through. This is Captain Yoon from the merchant ship Lucky Star. Earth is gone. They destroyed everything. The aliens. They killed everyone. If anyone hears this, run, hide. They are hunting down every human ship they can find. The signal died. Wu Jin sat in the darkness of his station, the only light coming from the instrument panels. His hands shook as he tried to process what was happening. Earth was gone. His family, his friends, his entire world was burning. He spent the next days listening to the few surviving transmissions. Each one told the same terrible story. The aliens had come without warning. Their ships were huge, and their weapons could destroy entire cities in seconds. They showed no mercy. They did not try to communicate or negotiate. They simply killed everything human they could find. The aliens called themselves the Vorthak. From what Wu Jin could understand from the broken messages, they led something called the Galactic Hegemony. They believed humans were too dangerous to live, too unpredictable, too willing to fight when they should surrender. 1 week after the first attack, Wu Jin detected new ships on his sensors. 3 large vessels were moving toward his station. His blood turned to ice when he realized they were not human ships. They had the same strange design as the ships that had destroyed Earth. He thought about running. The station had small escape pods. But where could he go? The aliens were everywhere now. They were hunting down the last humans across the solar system. There was nowhere to hide. Wu Jin made a choice that surprised even himself. He would not run. He would not hide in some asteroid field waiting to die slowly when his air ran out. If this was the end, he would face it with dignity. He put on his best clothes and sat in the command chair. When the alien ships docked with his station, he was ready for them. The airlock opened with a hiss. Wu Jin had never seen an alien before. The Vorthak were tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. They wore armor that seemed to shift and change color. Their weapons looked like they could cut through the station's walls without effort. The leader stepped forward. When it spoke, Wu Jin was surprised that he could understand the words. The alien must have learned human languages from their prisoners. "You are human," the alien said. Its voice was cold and mechanical. "Yes," Wu Jin replied. He kept his voice steady even though his heart was pounding. "You are alone?" "Yes." The alien studied him for a long moment. The other Vorthak soldiers kept their weapons pointed at Wu Jin's chest. He could see his reflection in their dark faceplates. I am Commander Velthar, the alien said. I led the fleet that cleansed your homeworld. Wu Jin felt anger rise in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Why? He asked. Why did you kill them all? Humans are chaos, Velthar replied. You do not follow rules. You do not accept your place. You create problems for the galactic order. The hegemony decided your species was too dangerous to exist. And me? Wu Jin asked. Will you kill me too? Velthar was quiet for a moment. He looked around the research station, taking in the equipment and the alien samples Wu Jin had been studying. You are a scientist, Velthar said finally. You study other species. This is useful. The hegemony wants to understand how humans think, how you fight, how you solve problems. You will be kept alive for study. Wu Jin felt his stomach drop. They wanted to use him like a laboratory animal. But he was alive. That had to count for something. What happened to the others, he asked. The other humans in space? Dead, Velthar said without emotion. You are the last, the final specimen of a failed species. The alien soldiers moved forward and put restraints on Wu Jin's hands. He did not resist. As they led him away from his station, he looked back, one last time at the place that had been his home. The Vorthak ship was massive inside. The walls seemed to be made of some kind of living metal that pulsed with soft light. Wu Jin was put in a small cell with a window that looked out into space. As the ship moved away, he watched his research station shrink into nothing. He was alone now. The last human in the universe, as far as he knew. The aliens thought they had won. They thought humanity was finished. But as Wu Jin sat in his cell, watching the stars through the small window, he made himself a promise. He would survive. He would learn everything he could about these aliens, and somehow, some way, he would make them pay for what they had done to his people. The Vorthak had made one mistake. They had left one human alive. And humans, Wu Jin knew, were very good at making the most of their mistakes. 25 years after Earth burned, the Shadow Network was ready to announce its existence to the galaxy. The secret fleets had grown to over 200 warships. Human soldiers trained alongside alien allies on hidden worlds. Most importantly, they had something the Vorthak never expected, the element of surprise. Commander Song Hai-Rin checked her instruments one final time. Around her, 50 human and alien ships waited in the asteroid field beyond the Torkesh system. Their target was the massive shipyard that supplied the Vorthak's eastern fleets. All ships report ready, her communication officer announced. Hai-Rin looked at the tactical display. The shipyard was heavily defended, but most of its weapons were designed to stop large fleets attacking from predictable directions. The Shadow Network had something different in mind. Begin Phase 1, she ordered. The attack started with what looked like a routine pirate raid. A dozen small ships emerged from hyperspace and attacked the outer sensor stations. The Vorthak defenders responded exactly as expected, sending their patrol ships to deal with what seemed like a minor threat. While the defenders chased the decoy ships, Hai-Rin's main force emerged from the asteroid field. They had been hiding there for 3 days, waiting for this moment. The hybrid human-alien ships moved faster than anything the Vorthak had seen before. Target the construction bays, Hai-Rin commanded. Weapons free, the Shadow Network ships opened fire with weapons that combined alien power with human innovation. Energy beams that could adjust their frequency during combat. Missiles that could change their target in flight. Torpedo spreads that split into multiple warheads just before impact. The Vorthak defenders tried to respond, but their rigid tactics worked against them. They formed up in their standard defensive formations and fired at where they expected the human ships to be. But the human vessels were already somewhere else, attacking from a new angle. Their command ship is trying to coordinate a counterattack, reported Hai-Rin's tactical officer. Then let's give them something else to worry about, she replied with a grim smile. A third wave of ships appeared. This time, they were vessels from allied species that had secretly joined the rebellion. Kethmar raiders and Merdon stealth ships attacked the shipyard's defensive platforms from completely unexpected directions. The Vorthak had planned for rebellions before. They knew how to crush resistance movements, but they had never faced anything like this. The attackers seemed to know exactly where their weak points were. They targeted systems that should have been secret. They used tactics that countered Vorthak doctrine perfectly. Within 2 hours, the shipyard was in ruins. Dozens of half-built warships floated in space as burning wreckage. The facility that had taken decades to build was destroyed in a single battle. But this was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, similar attacks were happening simultaneously. An Dong-hyuk led a strike team that destroyed a major weapons research facility. Teams of infiltrators sabotaged communication networks and supply depots. Resistance groups that had been waiting in secret for decades finally revealed themselves. The Vorthak government was caught completely off guard. Emergency meetings were called on the homeworld as reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. "How is this possible?" demanded Supreme Commander Velthar as he reviewed the tactical reports. "The humans were extinct. We confirmed it ourselves." His intelligence chief shifted nervously. "The attackers are using human tactical patterns, but their ships include technology from multiple species. Someone has been building an alliance in secret." Velthar studied the battle reports more carefully. The attack patterns were too sophisticated for a simple rebellion. Someone had been planning this for years, gathering intelligence and preparing for exactly this moment. "There's more," the intelligence chief continued. "We're receiving reports that resistance groups on dozens of worlds are coordinating their activities. This isn't random violence. It's an organized military campaign." In his cell at the research facility, Wu Jin felt the vibrations through the station's hull as ships launched and defensive systems activated. He had been expecting this moment for months, ever since he sent the final intelligence package to the Shadow Network. The facility's emergency alarms were screaming. Guards ran through the corridors shouting orders in their harsh language. Through his small window, Wu Jin could see Vorthak ships racing away from the planet to deal with attacks throughout the system. This was his chance. After 25 years of careful planning, the moment had finally arrived. Wu Jin had spent decades learning everything about the facility's security systems. He knew when the guards changed shifts. He knew which corridors had surveillance and which ones were blind spots. Most importantly, he knew exactly how to overload the power grid. The research station relied on automated systems for most of its operations. During emergencies, those systems were designed to prioritize life support and defensive capabilities. Security was considered a lower priority. Wu Jin had been working on his escape plan for years. He had identified several ways to disable his cell's locking mechanism. He had memorized the layout of the entire facility. He had even prepared supplies by hoarding items from his daily testing sessions. When the facility's main power grid fluctuated, due to the military emergency, Wu Jin put his plan into action. He used a modified testing device to overload his cell's power supply. The locking mechanism failed exactly as he had calculated. For the first time in 25 years, Wu Jin was free. He moved carefully through the corridors, avoiding the main passages where guards might still be stationed. The facility was in chaos as the staff tried to deal with the galaxy-wide emergency. No one was paying attention to one human prisoner. Wu Jin made his way to the communication center. This was the most dangerous part of his plan. The communication array was heavily guarded and monitored at all times. But during an emergency, most of the guards would be dealing with other priorities. He found only 2 guards at the communication center. They were focused on monitoring military transmissions and coordinating with Vorthak fleets. They never saw Wu Jin approach from behind. The guards went down without making a sound. Wu Jin dragged their bodies out of sight and took their access codes. For the first time in decades, he had unlimited access to the Vorthak communication network. His fingers moved quickly over the alien controls. He had watched the operators use this equipment for years. He knew exactly how to access the most classified information in the Vorthak government: military deployment schedules, government leadership locations, strategic resource stockpiles, defense system codes. Wu Jin downloaded everything he could find and transmitted it to the Shadow Network, using the quantum communication protocols they had established. But he wasn't finished. He also sent a message to every resistance cell and alien ally the network had recruited. The message was simple, but devastating: the exact location and security codes for the Vorthak High Command Center. As he worked, Wu Jin could hear fighting in the corridors outside. Human and alien forces had found the research facility and were fighting their way inside. The sound of gunfire and explosions grew closer. The door burst open just as Wu Jin finished his transmission. He turned, expecting to see Vorthak guards. Instead, he found himself looking at humans in combat armor. Real humans, not the scientists who had studied him for so many years. "Are you Kang Wu Jin?" asked the team leader. Wu Jin nodded, hardly believing what he was seeing. "You're really here. Humanity really survived." "More than survived," the soldier replied with a grin. "We're winning. And thanks to the intelligence you just sent us, we're about to win a lot faster." As the rescue team led him away from the facility, Wu Jin looked back one last time at the place that had been his prison for 25 years. The research station was burning now, its laboratories and testing centers destroyed by the human assault force. He thought about all the years of pain and isolation, the daily humiliation of being studied like a laboratory animal, the constant fear that he really was the last human in the universe. But it had all been worth it. His sacrifice had given humanity the intelligence they needed to plan their return. His years of careful observation had identified the weaknesses that would bring down the Vorthak Empire. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Wu Jin watched the Vorthak homeworld shrink behind them. Soon, he would see other humans again. He would help plan the final assault that would free the galaxy from Vorthak tyranny. The aliens had thought they were studying a defeated specimen. Instead, they had been harboring the architect of their own destruction. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength had never been their weapons or their ships. It was their refusal to give up, no matter how hopeless things seemed. And now that determination was about to change the course of galactic history forever. The final assault on the Vorthak homeworld began at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. Ryu Jin Woo stood on the bridge of the flagship Resilience, watching as the largest human fleet in 25 years emerged from hyperspace above the planet that had ordered Earth's destruction. 300 ships filled the void around the Vorthak capital world. Not just human vessels, but ships from dozens of species that had joined the rebellion. The fleet that had once seemed impossible was now a reality, and it carried the hopes of every enslaved world in the galaxy. "All ships report ready for battle," announced Communications Officer Lee Min-jung. Jin Woo studied the tactical display. The Vorthak had pulled back most of their fleets to defend their homeworld, but they still outnumbered the rebel forces. On paper, this should be a suicide mission. But Jin Woo knew something the enemy didn't. Sitting beside him in the command chair was Kang Wu Jin, the man who had spent 25 years learning everything about Vorthak weaknesses. The intelligence he had provided would make all the difference. Their defense grid has a 30-second gap every time they rotate sensor frequencies, Wu Jin explained, pointing to specific coordinates on the display. "If we hit them at exactly the right moment, we can get through their outer defenses before they can respond." Jin Woo nodded and opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Jin Woo. 25 years ago, they thought they destroyed us. Today, we show them that humanity cannot be broken. Today, we show the galaxy what freedom looks like." The battle began with a coordinated strike that caught the Vorthak completely off guard. Human ships used the defensive gap Wu Jin had identified to punch through the orbital platforms. Alien allies attacked from directions the defenders had never considered vulnerable. But the real shock came when the Vorthak tried to coordinate their counterattack. Their communication systems, infiltrated by human agents years earlier, suddenly began broadcasting false orders. Ships received contradictory commands. Defensive systems turned on each other. Supreme Commander Velthar watched, in horror from his command center, as his carefully organized defenses collapsed into chaos. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. His tactical officer was pale with fear. "Sir, they seem to know our protocols better than we do. Every time we try to adapt, they're already 3 steps ahead." On the surface of the Vorthak homeworld, resistance cells that had been planted years earlier began their own attacks. Government buildings exploded. Communication towers went dark. Transportation networks shut down. The Vorthak had built their empire on the belief that they were superior to all other species. They had created a government that could not imagine being outfought by primitive aliens. Now that arrogance was destroying them. In orbit, the space battle was turning into a rout. Human ships moved with a fluidity that the rigid Vorthak formations could not match. When the enemy tried to surround them, they dispersed. When they tried to retreat, the humans predicted their movements and cut them off. Song Hee-rin, now commanding her own battle group, led a strike against the planet's main shipyard. Her ships danced between the defensive towers, destroying weapons that had been designed to stop conventional attacks. Target their command ship, she ordered. End this. The massive Vorthak flagship was trying to escape the battle, but An Dong-hyuk's stealth squadron was waiting. They had been hiding in the planet's shadow for hours, ready to cut off any retreat. Surrender now and your crew will be spared, Dong-hyuk transmitted to the enemy ship. The response was a barrage of weapons fire. The Vorthak would rather die than submit to species they considered inferior. The battle that followed was brief but decisive. Human tactics, alien courage, and 25 years of careful planning combined to destroy the ship that had led the genocide against Earth. But the final confrontation was still to come. As the orbital battle raged, a single human ship broke away from the main fleet and headed for the planet's surface. Wu Jin had insisted on leading this mission personally. The ship landed near the research facility where he had been imprisoned for so many years. Security forces tried to stop them, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The humans and their alien allies fought their way through the complex with ruthless efficiency. In the facility's main laboratory, Velthar was waiting. The Vorthak commander had armed himself and dismissed his guards. This would be settled between the two beings who had started this conflict decades earlier. You, Velthar hissed when he saw Wu Jin enter the room. The broken specimen. How are you here? I was never broken, Wu Jin replied calmly. I was learning, watching, preparing for this moment. The alien's weapon trembled in his hands. Your species was supposed to be extinct. We made sure of it. You made sure of nothing. You killed billions of innocent people because you were afraid of what humanity might become. Well, now you get to see exactly what we became. Velthar fired his weapon, but Wu Jin was no longer the helpless prisoner he had captured decades ago. The human had trained for years in preparation for this moment. He moved aside and returned fire with precision that surprised even himself. Vorthak commander fell, his weapon clattering across the floor. As he lay dying, he looked up at the human who had been his prisoner for so long. How? He whispered. How did you survive what we did to you? Wu Jin knelt beside his former captor. Because that's what humans do. We survive, we adapt. We never give up no matter how hopeless things seem. He stood and walked to the laboratory's main computer. With a few commands, he activated the facility's emergency broadcast system. His voice would be transmitted across the galaxy, to every world and every species, people of the galaxy, he began. My name is Kang Wu Jin. 25 years ago, the Vorthak Empire tried to commit genocide against humanity. They thought they had succeeded. They were wrong. The broadcast reached billions of beings across countless worlds. On planets where resistance had seemed impossible, people looked up at the sky and saw Vorthak ships burning. The empire that had seemed invincible was collapsing. Today marks the end of the galactic hegemony, Wu Jin continued. But this is not about replacing one tyranny with another. Humanity does not seek to rule over you. We seek to stand beside you as equals. As the broadcast ended, reports began coming in from across the galaxy. Vorthak forces were surrendering on dozens of worlds. Enslaved species were declaring their independence. The empire was fragmenting as subject worlds realized they could be free. On the human flagship, Admiral Jin Woo received a transmission from the planet's surface. The Vorthak government was requesting terms for surrender. Tell them there's only one term, Jin Woo replied. Complete freedom for all enslaved species, no exceptions. Within hours, the formal surrender was signed. The galactic hegemony, which had ruled through fear for thousands of years, ceased to exist. But the real work was just beginning. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered on the neutral world of Keftar to discuss what would come next. Humanity, despite having led the rebellion, insisted that all species have equal voices in the new government. Nam Su-young, who had become humanity's chief diplomat, addressed the assembly. "We propose a coalition based on mutual respect and shared sovereignty. No single species will rule over others. Each world will determine its own destiny." The debates lasted for months, but eventually, the Free Worlds Coalition was established. It was messy and complicated, with dozens of different political systems trying to work together. But it was free. A year after the final battle, Wu Jin returned to Earth for the first time in 26 years. The planet was still scarred from the Vorthak attack, but reconstruction had begun. Millions of humans and alien volunteers were working to rebuild what had been lost. He stood in what had once been Seoul, looking at the memorial that marked where his childhood home had been. The city was being rebuilt, but it would never be exactly the same as it had been before the attack. "Do you regret it?" asked Lee Dahai, who had become Earth's reconstruction coordinator. "All those years in captivity, all that suffering." Wu Jin considered the question carefully. The suffering was real. The pain was real, but it led to something important. It led to freedom for billions of beings across the galaxy. He looked up at the sky, where human and alien ships worked together to bring supplies to the rebuilding effort. The Vorthak thought they were studying a broken specimen. Instead, they gave me 25 years to learn everything about them. They gave me the knowledge we needed to defeat them. And now? Now we build something better. Something based on cooperation instead of domination. Something that ensures this kind of genocide never happens again. As the sun set over the ruins and construction sites of Earth, Wu Jin felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Peace. The war was over. The galaxy was free. And humanity had proven that no matter how dark things became, hope could never be completely destroyed. The Vorthak had made one critical mistake when they decided to spare a single human life. They had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, the refusal to give up, even when everything seemed lost. That strength had not only saved humanity, but had freed an entire galaxy, and it would ensure that future generations would never again have to live under the shadow of tyranny.